Hi, welcome to this video series on the preparation for your GMAT quantitative reasoning section. So, today's topic is ratio and fractions for the data sufficiency type of question. There are two types of question in your quantitative reasoning sections. One is the problem solving and the other is data sufficiency. So, in problem solving you have a question and 5 answer options. You select the one that suits the best, whereas data sufficiency you have one question and 2 statements given. You have to check whether the data given is sufficient to answer the text or question or not. So, let us see the answer options for data sufficiency question. These are standard for every data sufficiency type of question. So, answer option A is when statement 1 alone is sufficient, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, and answer option B is when statement 2 alone is sufficient, but statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. Answer option C is when both statements together are sufficient, but neither statement alone is sufficient to answer the question. Answer option D is when each statement alone is sufficient to answer the question, and answer option E is when statements 1 and 2 together are also not sufficient to answer the question. So, let us move to the questions. Today's first question is, if x is a positive integer, what is the units digit of x? Okay. So, what is the question asking? Question is asking the units digit is what? Of x. So, statement 1 tells us that the unit digit of x by 10 is equals to 4. So, x by 10, the units digit will be 4. But what do x by 10, we need the units digit of x, not x by 10. So, it can be that x is x by 10 x is what? 4. So, 44. So, if then x by 10 the units digit will be 4, or x can be let us say 41. So, when you divide by 10 you will have 4.1. So, the units digit will come out to be 4 again. So, here the number can be anything, 40 anything, it can be even 40, then also the units digit comes out to be 4. So, you cannot comment on whether the units digit of x, these are the digits of x, these are the digits of x, where the answer of x by 10, the unit digit of 4 x by 10 is 4 in all these cases. So, therefore, clearly this information is not sufficient to answer the question. Now, let us look at statement 2. Statement 2 is when 10th digit of 10x is equals to 5. The 10th digit is equals to 5. So, definitely then x should have units digit as 5. Only then can the 10th digit become the 10th digit is equals to 50. 10th digit can be 5 only when the units digit is equals to 5. If the units digit is anything other than 5, let us say it is 4, then the 10th digit will become 40. So, this is not correct. So, always it has to be 5, the units digit of x will have to be 5 from this. So, this information is clearly sufficient to answer the question. Therefore, when statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question and statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question, answer option becomes B. Let us see the next question now. Company M has 2 divisions, X and Y. Each division has exactly 2 types of employees, clerks and managers. Is the ratio of clerks to managers greater for division X than that for Y? Okay. Statement 1 tells us that division X has 20% managers, and second statement says that company M is 15% managers. So, from just the first statement, you need the ratio of clerks is to manager. Is it greater for the division X than Y? Okay. The ratio is greater for X than in Y. Is it that way or not is what the question is asking us. So, first statement says that in division X it has 20% managers, and statement 2 is telling us that company M has 15% managers. Okay. From statement 1 you do not know anything about the situation. You can say that the clerks will be 80% in division X, but you do not know anything about division Y. What is the situation in division Y? So, therefore, this information is not sufficient to answer the question. And then next is when company M has 15% managers, but when M has 15% managers, you know nothing about X and Y, you do not know anything about X and what is the situation in Y. So, therefore, this alone is also not sufficient to answer the question. We only know that M has 15% managers. So, when you combine statement 1 and statement 2, we have division X has 20% managers, but overall company M has 15% managers. And since M is an average of X plus Y by total number, it is an average of X and Y. The managers if in M, if they are 15% and the managers in X is 20%, and definitely Y must be less than 15%, so that the average comes out to be 15%. So, therefore, the number of managers is lesser in division Y than the number of managers in division X. So, the ratio of clerks to manager will be greater for Y, because there are greater number of clerks here, there are lesser number of managers here than X. Therefore, this information together is clearly sufficient to answer the question. So, when statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, and statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, but statement 1 and 2 together are sufficient to answer the question, answer option becomes C. Let us see the next question now. If X is equals to 0 point A, B, C, D, where A, B, C and D each represent a non-zero digit of X, what is the value of X? Okay. Statement 1. Statement 1 tells us that A by 2 is equals to B is equals to 2C is equals to 4D. So, from this and this, the last two, you will have A is equals to 8D. So, when A and D are both non-zero, the only way this is possible is when D is equals to 1. If D is equals to 2, A will become 16 and it will not be a digit. A and D both should be a digit. So, therefore, D should be 1 and A should be 8. So, if D is 1, you have B is equals to 4D, which will be equals to B will come out to be 4, and you have 2C is equals to 4D, C is equals to 2D. So, this C will come out to be 2. So, therefore, you have the values of all A, B, C and D. You have X will be equals to 0.8421. So, this is, hence we can say the value of X. Therefore, this information is clearly sufficient to answer the question. Let us see statement 2. Statement 2 is product of A and D is equals to product of B and C. It can be anything like 1 into 2 is equals to 2 into 1, or 1 into 1 is equals to 1 into 1, or 2 into 2 is equals to 2 into 2. It can be any combination. There are many more combinations. You can say 1 into 3 is equals to 3 into 1 for making this true. So, therefore, this is clearly not sufficient to answer the question. So, when statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, answer choice becomes answer A. Let us see the next question now. If A is a 3-digit integer and B is a 3-digit integer, is the units digit of the product of A and B greater than 5? Okay. They are asking us, A is a 3-digit integer and B is also a 3-digit integer, and they are asking us if the units digits of the product A and B will be greater than 5, just the units digit. So, statement 1 is telling us the unit digit of A is 4. So, if the unit digit of if A is 4, but the unit digit of B can be anything, 1, 2. If it is 1, it can be 0 also, 0, 1, 2. If it is 0, the unit digit becomes 0, that is less than 5, and if it is 1, it is again unit digit will become 4, which is less than 5, but if it is 2, then it will become 8 and the unit digit will be greater than 5. So, therefore, it is not conclusive. So, this information is not sufficient to answer the question. Where you look at statement 2, statement 2 tells that the unit digit of B is 7, B is 7. So, therefore, A can be, if A can be anything. So, if A is 0, then it is less than 5, but if A is 1, it is greater than 5. Therefore, this information is also not sufficient to answer the question. But when you put the statements 1 and 2 together, you have A has 4 as the units digit and B has 7 as the units digit and B has 7 as the units digit. So, the product of A into B will have product of 4 into 7, that is 28, 8 as the units digit and it is greater than 5. So, therefore, this information is sufficient to answer the questions. So, when statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, but statement 1 plus 2 together are sufficient to answer the question. Answer becomes option C. Answer option C is our answer. Let us move to the next question now. What is the ratio of prices of A and B? 3 years ago, their prices were in the ratio 4:5. In the last 3 years, the price of both A and B has increased by 5,000. So, you want the ratio of prices of A as to B is equals to what? And the first statement is saying 3 years ago, the ratio was 4:5, 3 years ago. But we do not know if the ratio remained same, increased or decreased in the to guess what the ratio of prices are right now. So, therefore, this information is not sufficient to answer the question. Now, statement 2 tells us that in last 3 years, price of both A and B has increased by 5,000. So, on its own, we do not know anything about the ratio in anything about the values of A and B in the last 3 years. So, we cannot say just because it increased by 5%, this is also not sufficient to answer the question. Now, putting statement 1 and 2 together, you have that 3 years ago it was 4:5. So, let us say it is 4x and 5x, the ratio of prices of A and B. And now they are increased in the last 3 years by 5,000. So, it has become 4x plus 5,000 and 5x plus 5,000. So, together it becomes this, and the ratio here will be A to B is equals to 4x plus 5,000 is to 5x plus 5,000, which is still you do not know the value of x. So, therefore, this is also information is not sufficient to answer the question. So, therefore, when statement 1 and 2 together are also not sufficient to answer the question, answer option becomes E. Answer option choice is E. So, let us move to the next question now. Let x be a 2-digit number whose tens digit is t and whose units digit is u. What is the value of x? Okay. So, the question is asking us what is x equal to. First statement is saying that x is a multiple of 15. So, multiple of 15. So, x can be what? X can either be 15, it can be 0 also, it can be 15, it can be 30, it can be 45, it can be 60 or it can be 75 or it can be 90. There are only 2-digit numbers. So, the 2-digit numbers are this, 0 is not a 2-digit number. So, x can be 15, 30, 45, 60, 75 or 90. So, there are so many possibilities when x is a multiple of 15. So, this information alone is not sufficient to answer the question. Now, look at the statement 2 is saying sum of digits t plus u is equals to 9. Sum of the digits t and u is equals to 9. So, we can still not answer this question. It can be anything like 18, it can be 27, it can be 36, it can be 63, it can be any of these numbers, it can be 45, it can be 54, it can be any of these numbers. So, therefore, this information is also not sufficient to answer the question. So, let us put now statement 1 and 2 together. Together you have x is a multiple of 15 and the digits in the x sum up to 9. So, there are how many options from this where the digits sum up to 9? We have 45 and we have 90. So, there are 2 possibilities still existing. So, therefore, there is no conclusive answer. So, this information is also together or also not sufficient to answer the question. So, when statement 1 alone is not sufficient, statement 2 alone is not sufficient and statement 1 and 2 together are also not sufficient to answer the question, answer becomes answer option E. E is our answer. Let us begin the next question now. Fewer than 48 children were surveyed about their pet preferences. Some of the children prefer foxes, some prefer wolves, while the remaining prefer vultures. How many of the children surveyed prefer foxes as pets? Okay, statement 1 is saying that ratio of number of children who prefer foxes to the number of children who prefer wolves is 4:3. Statement 2 is saying that the ratio of number of children who prefer foxes to the total number of children surveyed is 5:9. So, we need to know the probability that the children surveyed are preferring foxes, that so P of foxes is equals to what? Statement 1 is saying that the number of children who preferred foxes, that is number of children preferred foxes is to the number of children who preferred wolves is 4:3. So, okay, from this we cannot give, we do not know what the total number of children are, or the ratio of vultures, we do not know how much is the fraction of vultures. So, we cannot comment on what is the probability that the children who prefer foxes is equals to what, we do not know, we cannot give the approximation, the value of that probability. Therefore, this information is not sufficient to answer the question. When we look at statement 2, the ratio of children who prefer foxes to the total number of children surveyed is 5:9. Okay. So, let us equate this two ratios. So, this alone is also not sufficient to answer the question. We do not know the value of wolves from here or the value of vultures. So, when we only know the ratio, we do not know the how many of the children surveyed can be foxes. We know the ratio, but we do not know the number. We do not need the probability, we need the exact number. Number of foxes, number of children who preferred foxes is equals to what? Okay. So, if you multiply the first ratio by 1 and taking 1 and 2 statements together, let us equate the fraction, the ratio with foxes, so that you can give that total number in that ratio. So, foxes is to wolves is equals to 4 divided by 3, which can also be 4 into 5 divided by 3 into 5. Since there is a 5 for foxes here, you have 20 by 15, and the fox is to total number will be equal to 5 by 9, which is equals to again 5 into 4, you cross multiply that, 9 into 4 will be 20:36. So, the total number has to be less than 48. So, the foxes is to wolves is to total will become 20:15:36. If you multiply this ratio, it can either be 20, 15 and 36, or it can be 40, 30 and 72, but the total number should be less than 48. So, therefore, this has to be multiplied only by 1. So, therefore, you can say that there were 20 children who preferred foxes. Therefore, this statement together are sufficient to answer the question. So, therefore, this answer becomes answer option C, where statement 1 and 2 together can answer the question, or statement 1 alone or statement 2 alone can answer the question. Let us move to the next question now. A jar contains pills that are either red or blue. What is the ratio of red pills to blue pills? There are 15 red pills in the jar, and once second statement says that 1/6 of the pills in the jar are red. Okay, it either has a red pill or a blue pill. What is the ratio of number of red pills to the number of blue pills? Okay, the first statement is saying there are 15 red pills in the jar. So, we know the number of red pills, but we do not know what blue pills are. So, therefore, this information is not sufficient to answer the question. Statement 2 is saying 1/6 of the pills in the jar are red. So, red is equals to 1/6. So, the number of blue pills will be what? 5/6. So, therefore, the ratio of number of red pills to the number of blue pills will be equals to 1/6 divided by 5/6, which is equals to 1/5. Therefore, this information is sufficient to answer the question. So, therefore, when answer option 1 is not sufficient to answer the question, but option 2 is alone is sufficient to answer the question, the answer becomes answer option becomes B. So, those were some sample questions on the topic of fractions and ratios. Hope they were clear. Thanks for watching.